My timer. Good evening, everyone. Oh, that's even better. I don't have to pay attention to a phone. Thank you. Feels like a full room, full Zendo. Really nice. Reminds me of before the pandemic. Wednesday night, this Dharma talk was when the Zendo would be full with local Sangha. 50, 60, 70 of us in the room. And so the feeling of all kind of being together feels like Wednesday night, church night, Zen church night. And with all of you with us, it kind of completes that feeling that we're all together. So we're in the beginning of the second half of practice period together. Those of you just joining us for the evening, somewhere in the middle. And it's a wondrous thing to get to practice this way. And sometimes it can be we get a little tired in the middle. We're like, oh, wow, we're doing a lot. And tomorrow, we have a huge ceremony, a really big ceremony. So Agnes, welcome into the community. Agnes has been quarantining and just stepped in. And Nancy, welcome into the community. Senko's mom. And Senko and Agnes tomorrow will ordain as novice priests and will shave off that hair and will come in, and it's like beginning anew, a whole new life, a life with the Dharma at the center of it. So it's an incredible commitment that they're both making, and it inspires us in our commitment in our life. So thank you both. There's been a lot of work that's gone into that already, and tomorrow's kind of the fruition. I think, Agnes, you sewed your robe 3 years ago. So this has been a long time coming. The pandemic is, our itinerary is subject to reality, as Roshi sometimes says. So tomorrow it occurs. So appreciation for Roshi as well for making this all possible, and the kind of big tent that nurtures our practice, allows this continuous practice we're in. So thank you, Roshi. Okay, I guess I have to talk about a case. So I thought I could just talk about what we're up to for the whole night. To admit, I can't see so well. I'm used to giving talks during the day when there's light coming down. So if I'm losing my way, it's because I'm half blind reading this talk. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you, Shorya. So tonight, I thought we'd look at case 79 from the Book of Serenity, or the Book of Equanimity. And case 79 is entitled Changsha Advancing a Step. So here's the case. Changsha had a monk at his monastery and has asked his monk to ask Master Hui, how was it before you saw Nanshuan? Hui remained silent when asked. The monk said, how was it after seeing him? Hui said, there couldn't be anything else. The monk returned and related this story to Changsha. Changsha said, the man sitting atop the 100-foot pole. Though he's gained entry, this is not yet the real. Atop the 100-foot pole, he should step forward. The universe is in all directions, is the whole body. The monk said, atop the 100-foot pole, how can you step forward? Changsha said, the mountains of Lang, the rivers of Li. The monk said, I don't get it. Changsha said, the whole land is under the imperial sway. Thank you, Shorya. This is going to help us all from a lot of our additional confusion. Let's see if these work. Oh.
Different tones.
don't think they have battery. No.
Okay.
We'll do without the bunny ears. It's okay. It's all right. I think, yeah. Okay, so you all got it? That's the best part of koans, you know? Okay, I'll read it again. This time we'll get it. Changsha had a monk ask Master Hui, "How was it before you saw Nanxuan?" Hui remained silent. The monk said, "How about after seeing him?" Hui said, "There couldn't be anything else." The monk returned and related this to Changsha. Changsha said, "The man sitting atop the 100-foot pole, though he's gained entry, this is not yet the real. Atop the 100-foot pole, he should step forward. The universe in all directions is the whole body." The monk said, "Atop the 100-foot pole, how can you step forward?" Changsha said, "The mountains of Lang, the rivers of Li." The monk said, "I don't understand." Changsha said, "The whole land is under the imperial sway." So we might ask, reading this koan, how do you step off a 100-foot pole? How do you get up a 100-foot pole? What is the real? And what does the real have to do with standing still or stepping forward? Okay, so we'll come back to that later, as you've realized it's nice in these koans to get to know everyone before we try and crack them open. So let's go to know our main protagonist, Changsha. So Changsha was born in 788. He died in 868. He was the Dharma grandson of great master Matsu. Matsu, the one who says, "This very mind is Buddha." And he's the student of another character in the story, Nanxuan. Nanxuan, one of his stories is he was once in the Dharma hall and he said, "That which is called knowledge or ignorance, even in the very smallest amount, is completely contrary to the way. So difficult, so difficult. Take care." So Nanxuan is Changsha's teacher, also Hui's teacher in this story. And Changsha was also the Dharma brother of Zhaozhou. Zhaozhou of the famous "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" koan, Mu. So they're Dharma brothers. They know and know each other, practice together. And at the same time, he's a contemporary of Yunyan and Dawu. So Yunyan, Dawu, we remember them from the famous sweeping incident of like 8:30 or something. We call it Broomgate in the Zen movement. So they all lived at the same time. They're all practicing together. This is a very rich time for Chan, very potent time in the Dharma. It's a time right after the Anlushan rebellion, a very difficult time in China for practitioners. And there's this flourishing both during and after. So Changsha has many teachings, really great teachings. And they all seem to focus on non-separation. If he's trying to impart something to us today, it's something like, don't separate from anything. And remember that nothing in the whole world is separate from you. So he just comes back to it in different ways. So here's a couple stories about Changsha before we return to the koan. Once a monk asked him, "Teachers of our order say, abide by sitting in the Bodhi seat. What is the seat?" Changsha replied, "Just now I'm sitting. Just now you're standing. Just now, just this." It's a great line. Just now I'm sitting. Just now you're standing. And yet we tend to separate from that right here, just this present moment relationship. We do it for a bunch of ways. This story reminds me that we don't just sit on the cushion. We're doing Zazen in the garden. We're doing Zazen in the kitchen. We're doing Zazen on the highway. Hopefully we're really practicing on these pathways. It's been snowing a lot here and then thawing and then getting icy. So we're practicing Zazen on the cobblestone path. But I think more often we separate by believing that our life or our true understanding are just around the corner, somewhere just around the bend. We're almost there, but not quite there yet. It's out of reach, and the right conditions might be the right teacher or the right books, the right Dharma talk perhaps, the right practice period, the right vocation. We're going to change something, we're going to tweak something, then we'll be there. And Changsha is saying, not so. That's not it. So here's another story. A monk once felt this way, perhaps, and asked Changsha, "What is the great way?" To which he replied, "It doesn't exclude you." The monk went on, "But who is it that teaches all the Buddhas?" And Changsha said, "For the incalculable eon, who has ever concealed this?" So both great stories. And there are many, many others. I've only chosen a couple. Oh, you know what? I knew something was off. Noah's nodding. Now you can hear. Well, now we can hear too well, actually. So you can turn it down. Oh, well, that was all preamble anyway. So in our story, Changsha asks a monk to go check on one of his Dharma brothers, Hui. And Hui, who has no recorded sayings, but is mentioned in the transmission of the lamp, who's mentioned kind of in the appendix of our history of the teachers. So clearly was a teacher, was recognized, but didn't say anything or have stories that were recorded. Hui studied with Nanchuan and then apparently went and lived as a hermit. So that's what we know about him. And this monk asked Hui, how was it before he met his teacher? And he remained silent. Nothing to say, nothing worth saying. Maybe he doesn't remember. Then he's asked, how about after he met his teacher? And he said, there couldn't be anything else. Kind of amazing expression of love, of gratitude, of maybe of realization. But apparently Changsha is not really into it, doesn't entirely approve. He says, Hui is like a man atop a 100-foot pole, which is like saying perhaps Hui has attained insight into impermanence, into no self, into suffering. We know these as the three marks, anicca, anatta, dukkha. And perhaps he's cut off many attachments. He lives as a hermit, of course. But he hasn't cut off the attachment to this 100-foot pole, apparently, to this 100-foot view. He's stuck atop a pole, unable to step off. And as Kathy reminded us the other day, in Zen practice, we don't dwell anywhere, not even nirvana. And so it seems as if Changsha is saying, something's amiss. But we have to notice that in this story, the metaphor is not for Hui. Hui is not even in the story, really. We hear about him secondhand through the monk. And so Changsha is talking to his student, which means he's talking to us. Each one of us is stranded atop a 100-foot pole. Maybe we climbed there, it took great effort. Maybe we jumped down from an even higher place onto a 100-foot pole. Maybe we don't know how we got there, which is likely the case. Nonetheless, we find ourselves atop a 100-foot pole. And we might have a good view from here. We might be able to see clearly. But attaching to this view, or holding on to this view, as some sort of endpoint won't do us or anyone else any good. As the capping verse, which I don't think I'll get to, kind of implies, you can't plant a seed from a 100-foot pole, and you can't harvest rice either. You can't hug one another, can't have a decent conversation. Have you ever tried talking to someone who's up like 4 stories? You can't do much from a top 100-foot pole. And so it's imperative that we step forward. So this was Roshi Bernie's, one of his favorite koans. And it's Bernie Glassman's birthday today, January 19th. Roshi reminded me earlier today, I chose this koan not knowing that. And, you know, there's article after article where he says, this is one of my favorite koans. But there's almost nothing he's ever said or written about the koan. So he refers to stepping off the 100-foot pole, but at least as far as I could tell, there's 2 paragraphs in Infinite Circle where he talks about the koan in earnest. So what Bernie says is that there are 4 stages to our practice, or 4 elements, we could say, to our practice. There's raising the Bodhi mind, meaning the aspiration to practice, the aspiration to wake up. There's practice, which is applying ourselves with great effort to every aspect of our life as kind of guided by our teacher, our teachers, and the Dharma. There's realization, which we might call the fruit of practice. And then there's letting go of realization, the 4th step. He says, these 4 take the form of an ever-opening spiral. So instead of stages that we kind of arrive at, he says these take the form of a spiral. And from the perspective of continuous practice, the first 3 are the activity of kind of steadfast effort. Continuous practice being the circle of the way, as Dogen says, circle of the way temple, the temple we're in now, this steadfast effort to show up and to practice. That's kind of like in an enzo, like the ink on the enzo. And then there's this 4th point. But wait, before we get to the 4th point, Bernie says something about those first 3 parts. Is there a buzz? Is that my mic? Oh, thanks, no. You got it. So he says these first 3 parts are really important, and it's like scaling a 100-foot pole, this practice. The 2 mics are in my pocket, kind of doing their thing. So I'm going to put one mic over here. Yeah, is that better? Okay, we got 4 elements. We're on the first 3, just bringing us back. He says these first 3, like scaling a 100-foot pole, very important. There's no end to these 100-foot poles, he says. It's not like there's one pole, we get to the top. There's no end to them. No matter how high the mountain you climb, he says, there are always higher and higher ones. That's the beauty of Zen practice. There's no end to it. It's never over. That's the first 3. And then there's the 4th activity of stepping off the pole, stepping off the mountain, jumping into the world anew. And in the Enzo, which I often think about, it's such a useful image of our practice, there's the opening of the Enzo, right? There's the abyss. We often say it's where the breath goes in and out, but it's also where we jump from, you know, into the space, into the unknown. So in our practice on the cushion, we notice this spiral or this circle as well. We sit and we notice we begin with our aspiration to wake up, our aspiration to serve others, our bodhisattva vow. We bring our attention to our breath. And as we sit still and upright, we notice where we are and all of the things we carry with us. And then with great effort and with equanimity, we steady our awareness on the breath. And on the inhale, we notice the whole world arising. And on the exhale, particularly the end of the exhale, that space between the exhale and the next breath, we jump off. Which is to say we let go. Whatever is there, we can let go. We don't need to hold on to anything. And then the next inhale, the whole world meets us again. And the next exhale, we let go. Okay, I have written here that I should have an interlude about 100-foot poles. And I'm going to be honest. I think this interlude's a mistake. But I was going to give an entire talk about AI. So by comparison, this is a small mistake. It's like I've stepped down to this 100-foot pole. So I can't help myself. I've been thinking about 100-foot poles all week. And so I've been thinking about height and why we like to go higher and the ways in which we go higher or lower. Of course, Kathy always reminds me she's a diver. So she plumbs the depths of the seas, and it's something we don't do enough of. We almost forget how wondrous it is to go down. But we very naturally, it seems, as humans, know that we like to go up. And this brought me to buildings and building up. Of course, we have the Tower of Babel, this kind of desire to go up, and the problems that can be woven into that ambition. Do you want my water, Roshi? So I'll keep it brief. History of tall buildings, the history of religion. You got the Acropolis, you got the pyramids, you got Tower of Babel. You have those really tall Buddhas in Afghanistan that were unfortunately destroyed. And then you hit the 20th century, and the history of tall buildings become skyscrapers. We didn't really have those, of course, until the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. The history of tall buildings becomes the history of commerce. Get the Chrysler Building, get the Sears Tower, get a bunch of buildings around the world that are very tall and that are office buildings. No longer are we going up to honor the gods, we're going up to honor trade, commerce, the invisible hand. Now, I don't know if you know this, there are new tall buildings. You heard of super talls? Nancy lives next to New York. Nancy's seen super talls. Anyone else who lives in New York knows what super talls are. If you haven't seen one, they're a sight. Super talls are super skinny, tall buildings. They're like as tall as the Chrysler Building, as tall as the old World Trade Centers, but they're 1/10 the size at the bottom. So they look like hypodermic needles, kind of, pointing to the sky, trying to puncture the sky. And they don't look like they should stand. They actually sway in the wind, and they do these tests. Sometimes they sway so much they make people seasick, or you can't have like a cup of tea. And these are all apartment buildings. So we now, our tallest buildings are now to honor billionaires, basically. That's the 21st century. But there's something about going up that is about status, about also showing what we care about. But we don't just do it for that reason. We do it because there's something about being above that makes us feel, and maybe really gives us a sense of things, really gives us a sense of perspective. Okay, those are buildings. In Zen, as Bernie pointed out, there aren't that many tall buildings. It wasn't really a big Zen thing. They're beautiful buildings, they're golden buildings, there's, ornate buildings. Going up wasn't a big thing because mountains are the way we go up in Zen, right? Monasteries are built on mountains. We name each other after mountains. Kigaku, Kozan were mountain names. And instead of this artificial thing of kind of man over nature, in Zen, we find that instinct to gain perspective right in the midst of nature. And so we climb mountains. And we know this about Zen because we've seen the cartoons of the people like climbing to the top of the mountain. And there's that monk sitting there serenely, who's like sat there from the beginning of time. And the person who's sweating and barely made it is like, what's the meaning of life? And the monk says, 1-800, we the people, or it's just what you can put whatever. One says like, do you want the Siri answer or do you want the other answer? My favorite one is, if I knew the meaning of life, do you think I'd be sitting here in the freezing cold? Some of my favorite cartoons. So we go up in a different way, and we venerate these mountains as kind of holders of perspective and broadness. I was at Yokoji recently, which is LA Zen Center's mountain temple. And these temples on the mountain, like Eiheiji Dogen's temple, going way off, they're usually in the middle of the mountain, right? They're not built at the top, they're not built at the bottom. They're kind of the middle way, perspective, but close to the marketplace. And I don't know if any of you have had this feeling. I have it walking pilgrimage with Roshi and our clinicians in the Himalayas, but sometimes I just need to go up and see where I am. So I was at Yokoji, this beautiful monastery in the mountains where many of our ancestors in our lineage are buried. Their funeral places there, their funeral placard are there. And I sat with them and we did service together. And I was just filled with joy to get the opportunity to be in this place. And before we were going to leave, and it's kind of nested under the mountains. And on the other side is Palm Springs, a place I've spent a lot of time just outside of LA. And I knew it was there, and I kind of knew where LA was, but I didn't know where I was. And I was just filled with joy. And what did I want to do with that joy? I needed to run to the top of this mountain before we left. So in the last hour of sunlight, I like a billy goat just like went up. There was no path, let me tell you. There was a lot of brush and a lot of things that draw blood. And I couldn't help. There was this like passion to see where I was, and this intimacy with the land, like somehow to be there and to pay respect was to be on that land in that way, to go into the mountain. And then I got to the top and it was already getting dark. The sun had already gone down. I stayed at the top for maybe 5 minutes and I went down. You know, you don't do that to hang out at the top of the mountain. People who go up Everest know this. You spend a whole years planning to go to the top of Everest. You risk your life, you get to the top. How long do you stay? 5 minutes, 15 max. The air is thin up there. So there's something in us around this. And this effort, like getting to the top of the mountain in our practice, which is never the final mountain, as Bernie points out, it has a real joy to it and a real purpose. That if we point our ambition to something else, if we don't point our ambition to our practice, it can cause all sorts of problems. But it can be really a joy and maybe useful if it's applied right here in our practice in the Dharma. Okay, that was the interlude. That was about tall things. Thank you for listening. Back to Wansong, our commentator for this koan. So Wansong has a different metaphor for us. And in his commentary, he says, I always tell people it's much like someone having taken their grandparents' house and business and their relatives themselves and sold them off on the same ticket. Then you put the ticket in a crystal jar, which you keep with you wherever you are, guarding it like your eyeballs. So this ticket, I don't know exactly what it means. I looked it up, but like an IOU for everything that's important to us. And this is kind of about us in practice period. It seems very apt. We leave our home, we leave our family, we leave all the things, but we don't exactly leave it. Maybe we put it in a ticket and we say, oh, all these things are who I am and what I carry with me. And I'm going to hide it somewhere kind of under my robes. And this isn't why I'm here, but it's under here. If I ever need it, I got the IOU for all the things that we thought we left. And so here I am. One song says, don't let me see it. Don't let me see the jar with the ticket in it. I'd surely pick it up and smash it on the ground. Now your hands are free. Now joyful, alive, with no taboo. It was kind of sweet and a little aggressive. So when we really let go of that ticket, what comes is joy, what comes is life, what comes is meeting each moment. But it can be difficult to do this. It can be difficult to free our hands in this way, as he says. And so oftentimes maybe we give one song a jar. Where's that? Here you go. Here's my jar with the ticket in it. And we know he's going to smash the ticket. He's going to throw the jar. He's going to throw the ticket in the river. And these are things maybe we've clung to for a long time, our sorrows, our hopes, our longings. And then we have to ask, well, was that really everything? Is there another bottle in my other pocket? Was that a decoy bottle I gave one song? And if that was the bottle I was planning to give him all along, then I already burned that ticket. That ticket is already gone. Is there something else, we have to ask? Is there a jar I'm holding even closer that maybe I don't even look at, so I don't bring one son's attention to it, or my own? Shishin Wick, in his commentary on this koan, says it's like saying, I can let go of this and I can let go of this other thing, but you want me to let go of that? No. If I let go of that, who am I going to be? And he says, precisely. So do we notice? Are we letting go as a kind of performance? Do we want the jar to be smashed? Do we want the feeling of the ticket thrown in the river? And do we know what we're still holding on to? We can ask, is it time or not? But do we know? So we can make up ideas in our head about what it is to let go, what it is to hold on, what it is to be unencumbered. But more importantly, as we know as Zen practitioners, can we notice how it feels when we hold on, how it feels to let go, and what it feels to hold on to whatever arises in each moment with an open palm? What does it feel like for every breath, for each step, to be stepping off a 100-foot pole? What does it feel like right now to let go? And do we want to come back? And then are we willing to let go again? So one song gives us another story, and this was a somewhat biblical story. So take it or leave it. It's going to have its kind of tone. We've already said he's a little aggressive. I should say Changsha was known also for being a bit of a rascal. He was called Tiger Chen. His name was Chen. And someone once said, oh, the moon is so beautiful, we all have it, but we don't know how to use it. And his friend said, he said, can you use it? And his friend said, oh, why don't you show me how to use it? And so he jumped on him and tackled him to the ground and just started kind of, they say jumping on his chest, but I imagine them kind of like saying like, I'm on top of you, now what? And his friend eventually threw him off and said, whoo, what a tiger. So that was kind of the feeling of this time. Okay, so Wansong gives us another story to give us a sense of this koan. He says, a man with views of self-attachment came to the Indian ancestor Upagupta. He sought initiation. And Upagupta said, the rule of seeking initiation is that you trust my words and do not doubt my instructions. The man said, I've already come to take refuge with you, master. I certainly will obey your command. Then Upagupta magically produced a precipitous cliff atop a very tall mountain. Here we are with mountains again. Right on top of the cliff was a large pine tree. And it was hanging over the chasm. Upagupta asked the man to climb the mountain and then to go to the cliff, to go to the tree and to climb the tree. And so he did, and it took some time. And then, as he was at the top of the tree, Upagupta said, let go of your footholds. And the man did as he was told. And then he bade him to let go of one of his handholds. And he let go of his handhold. So he's hanging by a tree over a chasm on a tall mountain with one hand. And finally, Upagupta bade him to let go of the other hand. And the man replied, if I let go of the other hand, I'll fall into the abyss. And the ancestor said, remember, you told me you trusted me. And from that trust, you promised to follow my instructions. And in that moment, the man let go. He let go of doubt. He let go of the tree. And he fell, but he didn't fall into the abyss. There was no abyss there anymore. So this is the mountains of Lang and the rivers of Li, which in the lore of all these koans, Lang is on one side of China, Li is on the other, and so it's saying in all directions, high or low. And this story is like Chogyam Trungpa saying, the bad news is you're falling, the good news is there's no bottom. But it's also like Changsha, whose most famous teaching was this. The entire world of the 10 directions is the human body, he said. The entire world in the 10 directions is within the radiant light of the self. I'll read it again. The entire world of the 10 directions is the true human body. The entire world in the 10 directions is within the radiant light of the self. So this seems to be the ardent invitation of the koan, the view it's passionately trying to drive home. Infinite freedom pervades each moment. When not covered up, it's readily apparent. So one teacher said, if you look for a single person who is not enlightened in just this, you cannot find one. Let go, and you are held, because you disappear into it. We can be fortified, I think, in our practice by the felt sense that when we step forward with all things, we step forward into all things. The whole land is under the imperial sway. And so our practice is standing firm atop a 100-foot pole to see clearly. Perhaps we see from there that there's nowhere the light of the self does not touch. And our practice is not to dwell there, not to dwell here, but to step off the pole again and again and again and again into reality, into the world anew. So this is plunging, dear Bernie Roshi, teaching us the value of plunging right into the middle of the situation, going to Auschwitz, being right in the middle of the thing everyone thought was a crazy idea. Street retreat, being right in the middle. And it's us meeting each other in practice period, plunging into the activity together, into our lives together. So at the end of his commentary, Wansong says something that's really struck me. And I won't say much about it, but here's what it is. I'll say a little bit about it. He says, where the ancients held still, they could let go to advance a step from atop the pole. When they let go, they could hold still and stand like a 1,000-foot wall. How were they so free, so independent? In the cities of Hunan, the people are well nourished. Rice is cheap, firewood is plentiful. All the neighbors have enough. In the cities of Hunan, the people are well nourished. Rice is cheap, firewood is plentiful. All the neighbors have enough. So the beginning of this gets me. It's an expression of commitment and appreciation. And then the second part as this expression of longing, this longing for harmony, for being together in harmony, to wake up together. And how can we be so free, so independent? When we all have enough, we can fully let go. And when we fully let go, we know what it is to have enough. So thank you for listening to my words about this koan. I have one final thing I want to share. I wanted to offer a koan. We should have a koan book about our time together, and sometimes fun things happen and they express the Dharma. As many of you know, the kind of first moment that turned me towards practice, I'd been practicing for a long time, but I was in a period of my life almost a decade ago. I was terminally serious, kind of insufferably serious, came here to sit, and then I went up to Prajna and walked with Roshi and with Kodo, and we were walking and talking about the Dharma, and I thought it was a very serious conversation, and before I knew it, a snowball had hit me across the face. And then a snowball fight ensued, and I became a resident, and here I am. So rather than talking about AI, which I think is a very important conversation, and which I think is a great metaphor for pratitya samappada, because AI, as it's developed today, or we talk about it, is not actually intelligence. It's taking everything we've ever written, everything we've ever made, finding patterns in it, and reflecting it back to us. And so it's this mirror, it's this lake. And ChatGPT, I don't know if anyone has used it, is the kind of leading chat AI of our time. We'll see what happens. So I asked ChatGPT to write a koan about that moment. In particular, I said, write a koan in the style of the Book of Serenity about two monks walking in the snow, challenging each other's understanding of the Dharma. I asked for one about a snowball fight. It wasn't as good as this one. So here's this koan. Case 100, two monks in the snow. Two monks were walking in the snow, each one challenging the other's understanding of the Dharma. It often starts very literally. The first monk said, "The snow is white." The trees are bare. This is the true nature of winter. The second monk replied, you are mistaken. The snow is not white. It is the absence of color, and the trees are not bare. They are simply empty. The first monk retorted, your words are empty. You do not understand the true meaning of winter. The second monk, with a smile, said, it is not winter that I do not understand, but your attachment to your own perception. The first monk was silent. And I would add, then one monk picked up a handful of snow and threw it at the other. A snowball fight broke out, and it continues to this day. So thank you all for listening. That's our koan. Start the book.